Hello, it's Book Quote Wednesday, and the word is run. Today I'm reading from my alternate history novel, The New World Order. Two representatives of a technologically advanced people, by which I mean they have things like steam power and other innovations, who are from opposite sides of a war, meet on neutral territory, England, 1645, during our Civil War. They are both very fond of the English, but neither of them thinks of the natives as being their equals. There was a deliberate nod to the works of Harry Turtledove when I wrote this. I was getting tired of alternate histories set during the American Civil War. I thought I'd write about our own instead. The woman called Mistress Connolly crouched down by the small metal ring in the corner of her room. She struck a match, quickly dropped the matchbox, and used her free hand to turn a little metal knob. A faint hissing filled the air. She lowered the match towards the portable stove, and a circle of clear blue flame blossomed round the ring. She smiled, satisfied, and flicked her wrist to extinguish the flame. Then she put the small pot of water on top of the fire and stood to wait. She could have called someone from the innkeeper's staff for boiling water to make her tea, but she valued these moments to herself. The army was about to march out again, and they would be under canvas for the next few days. She had never especially enjoyed that, but sometimes there were advantages to not sleeping in a bed. She glanced at the straw pallet where she had slept the previous night and wrinkled her nose. She had used up almost all her flea powder on the verminous heap, and in England this was considered quality hospitality. Someone knocked on the door. "Mistress Connolly?" It still amused her. Women in England were in an absurd position, both inferior to men, yet highly valued as bearers of children and keepers of home, somehow both at the same time. No respectable English woman would or could provide the service she did to her present employers, yet the need of these English was so desperate that they were willing to overlook her strange foreign customs. They called her mistress as much for their own reassurance as for hers. "What is it?" she called. "Your man is here." At last. "Tell him I'm coming," she said. She grabbed her coat and swung it on, and thrust her arms down the sleeves. It was a further concession to the customs of the English. She knew that her employers would far rather she wore a skirt that reached all the way to the ground, and the less ostentatious the better. But even they could see how impractical that would be in her position, so she wore a baggy shirt and leggings, and the coat hung down past her knees. The stitching and embroidery of the coat were not as flamboyant as they would have been back home, but the pastel shades of the patchwork were sufficiently restrained for the natives. It was a style 20 years out of date, but the English could convince themselves she was a respectable woman. Dressed appropriately, Connolly stooped to turn off the gas ring, then rose and stepped from her room to meet the newcomer. She hurried down the stairs, and the scent of a hollow-core mail tickled her nostrils. It was only when she reached the front room that she realized, and her eyes told her, it was not the mail she had been expecting. She stood in the doorway and studied the stranger. "Fevar Sokov Seradok," she said. "You're not Seradok?" "Prosh," he admitted cheerfully. "No. Should I be?" He was middle-aged, a touch shorter than her, and he held himself with a ramrod posture that she immediately recognized. That accent, he was Galecki or she was a native Englishwoman, and that stance, he was clearly a soldier of the might, the army of Golek that had conquered her country of Toskes and driven her and her family and friends here to the New World. The natives could not have known. They had simply assumed he was the man she was waiting for. "I suppose not," she said. Normally, in a polite conversation, she would now be holding out her hands crossed at the wrists for him to take, a friendly, civilized greeting. She did not feel like being friendly or civilized. "What are you doing here?" "Curiosity, nothing else." The man had his head at a slight tilt. His nostrils dilated slightly. He was scenting something about her, and she was abruptly, annoyingly aware that she had not washed as much as she would have liked recently. "Gun oil," he said. "My curiosity is satisfied. You must be the one supplying guns to the natives. Nice work. Though, as the wise would never let weapons through Okshanev, how you managed to smuggle them through, I have no idea." Connolly held his gaze a moment longer, then slowly smiled. There was a distinct rural burr to his voice as well. Southern Alps, if she wasn't mistaken. He had probably been farming stock before joining the Might. In fact, he had probably been conscripted. The Toshkes campaign could scarcely be his fault, and her own accent must have been just as obvious to him, yet he was ready to be friendly. Conolly, she said, and I smuggle nothing. Now, she held out her hands in greeting. This was the New World, a place where old enmities had no place. Every weapon you've seen was made here in the New World. Sarah Dock is meant to be delivering a consignment. He snatched his hands away. You're showing them how to make modern guns? He demanded. Of course not. The fragile goodwill evaporated. Who did he think he was, coming in here and presuming to judge? Back home, Conolly would have been a member of a subdued, submissive nation, if she knew what was good for her. Here, fond as she was of the English, he had every intention of remaining in charge. Did this idiot think any sane woman or man would do otherwise? We operate the strictest controls, she said. Not that she needed to justify anything, but she felt the urge to explain. Maybe it's because he was a holocaust who didn't already know the operation. She could boast to him and he would appreciate it. The natives run errands, procure some of the materials, nothing special. Certainly nothing to show them how to do it themselves. All my colleagues, anyone who actually operates the presses and lathes, are holocaust. Toskeshi? As it happens, yes. She deliberately put little humour into a smile. We're all equal in the New World, Mr. Galecki. We have no conquerors here. He blinked innocently at the word conquerors. Have you been here long? Where are you based? Oh, we arrived here from Okshanev a couple of years back and set up a foundry in the tower. What tower? She paused. Was he joking? No, it seemed he really didn't know. The Tower of London, she said. If you came through London, you'd have seen it, a big fortress on the river. Ah, I didn't come through London, he said dismissively. Mistress Conolly, said a gruff voice in English behind them. Conolly turned quickly and bowed. Good morning, General, she said in the same language. 2 Englishmen had come into the room. The older man was stocky, though still more slender than the holocaust, with wiry, unattractive hair, a lumpy face, and arresting eyes that burned. The first time she met him, Conolly had picked up a sharp tang that spoke of deep conviction, certainty, and ruthlessness. She had always treated him with the utmost respect. But it was the younger one that spoke. Is this the associate you were expecting? He had a thin, narrow face and curly hair that fell to his shoulders. No, sir, Conolly said. She glanced at the stranger. She had never got round to asking his name. This is someone I haven't met before. We need those guns, Mrs. Conolly, said the older man. I know, General. They will be here any moment. The younger man wasn't listening to assurances. He was looking at the stranger. So if you are not Mrs. Conolly's associate, sir, who are you? The stranger bowed. My name is John Donder, sir, at your service. That is hardly a holocaust name, said the older one. Another bow. I was born and raised holocaust, sir, but I was baptized into the Christian faith on the 9th day of June in the year 1632 and given the Christian name of John. He couldn't have known it was exactly the right thing to say. Conolly looked at him as if he had just grown another head and thought bitterly of her own long, hard trial and error process of finding out how to get on the right side of the new model army's lieutenant general. Meanwhile, the same general bore down on this John Donder with a huge smile on his ugly face. You're a convert, he said. I suppose I am. Sir! He seized John Donder's right hand and pumped it up and down. To meet you, I cannot say. Sir, the scriptures order us to make disciples of all nations, and of course it is a sacred duty to bring people to our Lord, and I have many times seen men who are baptized in ignorance as children repent of their sins and turn truly to him, but you, a man who was born in darkness, raised in darkness, taught nothing but the foulest pagan untruths, who never even knew the faintest whisper of truth, as even the Catholics do, and you believed. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. Sir, you have doubled my faith. To see you, to meet you, is a tonic, a privilege, and beyond words. I'm delighted to meet you too, General Fairfax, John Donder said, a little taken aback by the sheer warmth of the reception. Conolly gave an abrupt laugh, which he turned into a cough, and the General dropped John's hand. Oliver Cromwell, he said, at your service. The younger man stepped forward. I am General Fairfax, he said mildly, and though John Donder hid it well on his face, Conolly scented his surprise. Lord General Sir Thomas Fairfax was surprisingly young to be leading an army. He was only in his early 30s. But there was an assurance about him, a confidence. This was the kind of man who, like the man Conolly had once heard of in the English scriptures, just had to speak to get his way. He would say come, and people would come, go, and they would go, and they would feel thankful for the privilege. Fairfax was a man you instinctively warmed to, a general, a leader, but with lines in his face that showed he could smile, he could laugh. If he delivered a rebuke, then he could be cold and hard, but it was put on. It was the tone that was required for delivering rebukes. Soldiers understood such things. Cromwell, on the other hand, Cromwell could smile, Cromwell could laugh. His sense of humour sometimes verged on the puerile, but he was different. Conolly decided to help John Donder out, and she murmured in the one tongue, "General Cromwell is second in command." "Well, it is an honour to meet you both, sirs," John Donder said. "So what does bring you here, Master Donder?" said Fairfax. The three of them looked at the stranger, and Conolly caught the distinct impression that he was trying very hard to think of something to say. He was saved by the loud clanging of a bell outside. Suddenly Newbury was in an uproar. Men were running in the streets, and one phrase stood out in the hubbub: "Royalist bastards!" Newbury was under attack. Remember, you can buy my books at www.benjeeps.com. See you next time.